On May 8, 1945, Sunday morning. The war is over. Across Europe, champagne corks are popping. American GIs are dancing in the streets of Paris. In London, they're celebrating in Trafalgar Square. Somewhere in Italy, soldiers are kissing nurses they've never met. Everyone is celebrating. Everyone, except for one man. In a quiet room in Linz, Austria, General George S. Patton sits at a luncheon table. Across from him is a Soviet marshal. The Russian is eating, chewing slowly, deliberately. Patton is watching him, and what he sees makes his blood run cold. Because in that moment, sitting across from his supposed ally, Patton realizes something that will haunt him for the rest of his life. Something that will get him silenced. Something that might get him killed. He realizes, we just fought the wrong enemy. This is the true story of the general who saw the future. The man who warned America about the Soviet threat. The prophet who was ignored. And the mysterious death that silenced him forever. The date is May 12, 1945. 4 days after victory. Patton flies to Linz with his closest staff, his chief of staff, Major General Hobart Gay, his intelligence officer, Colonel Oscar Koch, his aide, Colonel Charles Codman. They're meeting the commander of the Soviet 4th Guards Army. The Americans land at the Linz airfield. The moment they step off the plane, they feel it. Something's different. Something's wrong. The Soviet guards are standing at attention. Perfectly rigid, not a muscle moving, not a blink. These aren't the exhausted, battle-weary troops Patton expected. These are machines. The sound of their boots. Click, click, click. Perfect synchronization, like they're part of a single organism. The smell in the air. Vodka, strong tobacco, and something else. Something animal. Something savage. Patton shakes hands with the Soviet officers. The handshakes are cold, mechanical. No warmth, no camaraderie, just calculation. They sit down. For lunch, the table is covered with food, meat, bread, vodka, lots of vodka. The Soviet marshal eats like a predator, efficiently, brutally. He tears the meat with his hands. His eyes never leave Patton's face. And Patton is studying him right back. He's watching the discipline, the cruelty in their eyes. The way they move, the way they talk. Later that night, Patton writes in his diary. His hand is shaking slightly as he writes the words, recently civilized Mongolian bandits. But that's not even the most disturbing part. His aide, General Hobart Gay, writes his own observations in his journal. May 14th, 1945. One sentence that captures everything. Everything they did impressed one with virility and cruelty. Virility and cruelty. Those two words, together. This isn't an army. This is a horde. A disciplined, organized, brutal horde. And they're America's allies. But here's what Patton understands that no one else does. He's been a soldier his entire life. He knows how to read men. He knows how to read armies. And what he sees across that table terrifies him, because he recognizes something. These Soviet soldiers aren't celebrating victory. They're hungry. They want more. The war might be over for everyone else. But for the Soviets, this is just the beginning. Patton watches them review their troops. Thousands of Red Army soldiers, marching, singing, their boots shaking the ground. He compares them to the American soldiers he's seen in the last few days. His own men, exhausted, homesick, ready to go home. And the Soviets, fresh, energized, ready to keep fighting. On May 14th, Patton met Marshal Tolbukin, another high-ranking Soviet commander. They exchange medals. They smile for the cameras. But behind those smiles, Patton is making calculations. He's counting divisions, assessing equipment, evaluating morale. and the math is terrifying. 4 days earlier, on May 7th, Patton had met with the Under-Secretary of War, Robert Patterson, an important man from Washington, a politician. Patton had tried to warn him. I tried to make him understand. He had said, and I'm paraphrasing here, "Keep your boots polished and bayonets sharp. Show strength to the Soviets. That's the only language they understand." And Patterson had responded, "You have lost sight of big picture." Lost sight of the big picture. That phrase burned into Patton's mind. Because he realized they don't see it. Washington doesn't see it. Eisenhower doesn't see it. They think the war is over. They think they can trust Stalin. Patton knows better. Sitting at that luncheon table, watching the Soviet marshal tear into his meat, Patton makes a decision, a dangerous decision. He's going to warn everyone. He's going to tell the truth, even if it costs him everything, even if it costs him his life. The contrast is unbearable. On one side, American soldiers, farm boys from Iowa, factory workers from Detroit, college kids from California. They've been fighting for 3 years. They're tired. They're traumatized. They want to go home. They want to see their families. They want to forget. And they will go home. Demobilization has already started. By the end of 1945, most of them will be civilians again. On the other side, the Red Army. Soldiers who've seen their entire country burned. Their families were murdered. Their cities were destroyed. They're not tired. They're angry. And they're not going home. Because for them, home is rubble. Home is a mass grave. Home is nothing. They have nothing to go back to. So they keep moving forward. Patton sees this. He sees it with perfect clarity. He tries to explain it to his colleagues. He tries to make them understand. But they don't want to hear it. The war is over. Time to celebrate. Time to relax. But Patton can't relax because he knows what's coming. On the flight back to his headquarters, Patton is silent. His staff notices. They've never seen him this quiet. This is troubling. General Gay asks him what's wrong. Patton just shakes his head. He's thinking about Prague. He could have taken Prague. His tanks were 50 miles away, 2 days. He could have been there in 2 days. But Eisenhower had ordered him to stop, to let the Soviets take it. He's thinking about Berlin. He could have taken Berlin. His army could have beaten the Soviets there. But again, stop. Hold position. Let the Soviets have it. And now, sitting across from those Soviet officers, Patton understands why those decisions were catastrophic. Because the Soviets aren't liberators. They're conquerors. And every city they take, they keep. What Patton saw at that luncheon would lead him to make the most dangerous proposal of his career. A proposal so explosive, so controversial, that it would get him removed from command. A proposal that could have changed the entire Cold War, could have prevented 50 years of nuclear standoff, could have saved Eastern Europe from Soviet occupation, or could have started World War III. In the coming weeks, Patton would say things that would shock Washington, things that would horrify Eisenhower, things that would make him the most dangerous man in Europe. He would propose the unthinkable, and powerful people would decide he needed to be stopped. Stay with me, because what Patton said next got him silenced. And 7 months later, in a low-speed car accident that defied explanation, he would be dead. Was it an accident? Or was it something else? The story you're about to hear involves conspiracies, cover-ups, and one general's desperate attempt to warn the world. This is the story of the man who saw it coming and paid the ultimate price for telling the truth. In April 1945, Patton's Third Army is a steamroller. They've just crossed the Rhine, smashed through the Siegfried Line. The German army is collapsing like a house of cards, and 50 miles ahead lies Prague, the capital of Czechoslovakia, defenseless, barely a German soldier in sight. Patton's tank commanders are champing at the bit. They can taste it. 2 days, Patton tells his staff. Give me 2 days, and Prague is ours. His maps are marked. His fuel trucks are ready. The route is clear. Then the phone rings. It's the Supreme Headquarters, Eisenhower's office. The message is 3 words: stop, hold position. Patton stares at the phone like it's spoken Chinese. His face goes purple, because he knows what this means. Prague isn't for him. It's been given to the Soviets. The Red Army is still 100 miles away, slogging through the Czech countryside. But the order stands. Patton's Third Army, the most powerful fighting force in Europe, sits and waits and watches the Soviets roll in days later to a hero's welcome that should have been American. I could have taken it. Patton seethes to anyone who'll listen. I should have taken it. But Prague wasn't the worst of it. The real betrayal happened 3 weeks earlier, late April, the race for Berlin. Patton isn't even supposed to be in the running. The plan calls for British Field Marshal Montgomery to take the German capital from the north. But Montgomery's moving like molasses. His armies are bogged down, methodical, slow. Meanwhile, Patton's tanks are flying. And suddenly, shockingly, impossibly, Patton realizes he could get there first. His forward units are closer to Berlin than the Soviets. General William Simpson's Ninth Army is positioned perfectly. They're 60 miles out. The German defenses are crumbling. It's a straight shot. Simpson comes to Eisenhower, practically begging. "We can take Berlin," he says. "We're closer. We're faster. Give us the green light." Eisenhower's answer is final. No. Berlin has been promised to Stalin at Yalta. It's a political decision made by Roosevelt and Churchill. The Soviets will take the capital. That's the deal. Simpson is crushed. Patton is furious, because Patton knows what's about to happen. The Battle of Berlin began on April 16, 1945. 2.5 million Soviet soldiers assault the city. The Germans fight with the desperation of the damned. It's house to house, street by street, block by bloody block. The Soviets lost 70,000 men, another 250,000 wounded. And when the hammer and sickle finally flies over the Reichstag on May 2nd, the real horror begins. The Red Army doesn't liberate Berlin. They savage it. Patton watches the reports come in, read the intelligence. And on July 25, 1945, he wrote to his wife Beatrice. His words are bitter, anguished. The letter describes what the Soviets did to Berlin, the systematic brutality that followed their victory. "I could have taken it," he writes, "had I been allowed. How many American lives would have been saved? How many German civilians? How many women? The what-ifs pile up like bodies." But for Patton, this isn't just about Berlin or Prague. It's about something bigger, something nobody in Washington wants to hear. May 7, 1945, one day before VE Day. Undersecretary of War Robert Patterson visits Patton's headquarters. They talk strategy, occupation, the future of Europe, and Patton unloads. "The Soviets aren't respecting the demarcation lines," he says. "They're pushing into zones assigned to America and Britain, taking territory that isn't theirs, acting like they own the place." His warning is stark. "We need to keep our forces strong," he tells Patterson. "Keep our bayonets sharp. Stay ready. Because if we don't, if we disband this army, send the boys home, pretend everything's fine, then we've defeated Germany, but lost the war." Patterson listens, take notes, nods. politely, and does absolutely nothing. Because nobody wants to hear it. The war is over. The American people are exhausted. They want their sons home. They want to celebrate, rebuild, forget. The last thing anyone wants is another war, especially against an ally. But Patton can't let it go, won't let it go, because every day the evidence mounts. Soviet troops are brutal occupiers. They're stripping Eastern Europe bare, factories, resources, people. The Iron Curtain is descending in real time, and Patton sees it happening. While American soldiers are dancing in Paris, Patton is watching the map, watching Poland disappear behind Soviet lines, watching Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Romania fall into Stalin's orbit, watching the greatest land grab in modern history unfold, and nobody's stopping it. He's the only one screaming into the void, the only one who sees that the real enemy wasn't defeated on May 8th. It's just getting started, and Patton knows, with absolute certainty, that America has one chance. Right now, this moment. The U.S. Army is intact, 4 million men under arms, battle-hardened, equipped with the best tanks, planes, and logistics the world has ever seen. The Soviets are exhausted, overextended. Their supply lines stretch back to Moscow. This is the window. 6 months from now, a year, it'll be too late. The Americans will go home. The Soviets will dig in. Eastern Europe will be lost for generations. But if they act now, that's when Patton makes his decision. He's not going to stay quiet, not going to play the good soldier and keep his mouth shut. He's going to say what nobody else has the guts to say, even if it costs him everything. But Patton wasn't going to stay quiet. What he said next would make him the most dangerous man in Europe, and the most dangerous enemy of his own government on summer 1945. Patton tours the ruins of Berlin. The city is a moonscape. Entire neighborhoods reduced to rubble. The famous boulevards are canyons of shattered stone. Everywhere, the smell of death. He walks past burned-out tanks, steps over unexploded shells, sees German civilians picking through the debris, searching for anything, food, clothes, photographs of the life they used to have. And then he sees what the Soviets left behind. The bodies, the destruction that has nothing to do with combat, the systematic brutality inflicted on conquered people. Something breaks inside him. That night, Patton speaks the words that will haunt him forever. We fought the wrong enemy. 5 words. That's all it takes. His staff officers freeze. Did he really just say that? But Patton isn't done. The floodgates are open now. We defeated the wrong side, he continues, voice rising. The Germans are the only decent people left in Europe. It's not that he loves the Germans. Patton knows what the Nazis did. He's seen the concentration camps, walked through Buchenwald with his own eyes, vomiting at the horror. But standing in Berlin, watching the Soviet occupation, he's comparing outcomes. German efficiency versus Soviet savagery. German potential for rebuilding versus Soviet appetite for conquest. And in Patton's mind, the calculus is clear. We destroyed the one power that could have stopped the Soviets. And now nothing stands between Stalin and the Atlantic Ocean. The aides who hear this look at each other nervously. This is career-ending talk. This is the kind of thing that gets generals fired. But Patton is just getting started. Spring and summer of 1945. Patton is meeting with everyone, politicians, military brass, journalists he trusts. And to all of them, he's saying the same thing. Let's fight them now. Not tomorrow, not next year. Now, his proposal is simple, brutal, and, according to him, completely feasible. The American army is intact. 4 million strong, the most powerful military force ever assembled. Fresh from victory, equipped, trained, ready. The Soviets are exhausted. Their armies have been bleeding for 4 years. Their supply lines are overstretched. They've lost 27 million people. Strike now, Patton argues, and we can end this before it starts. We can kick them back to Russia in 3 months. He tells anyone who'll listen. 3 months. That's his timeline. Roll through Eastern Europe. Liberate Poland, Czechoslovakia, Hungary. Push the Red Army back across their borders. Dictate terms from a position of strength. And here's the kicker, the part that makes Washington's blood run cold. With the German troops we have, Patton says, if we're allowed to help them, we can do it even faster. He wants to rearm the Germans, take the Wehrmacht soldiers sitting in POW camps, give them back their weapons, and point them east. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Washington, they think he's lost his mind. President Truman is trying to build a peacetime alliance with Stalin. The United Nations is being formed. The whole post-war order depends on cooperation with the Soviets. And Patton wants to start World War III before World War II is even cold. But Patton has thought this through. He's got contingency plans, operational strategies. He even knows how to start it. When officials complain about Soviet violations, troops crossing demarcation lines, stealing equipment, harassing American personnel, Patton is told to be diplomatic. Handle it carefully. Don't create incidents. Keep the peace. Patton's response? I can start a war in 2 days if you want me to. The room goes silent. He lays it out. Simple, efficient, terrifying. Create border incidents that look like Soviet aggression. Stage confrontations. Make it appear the Soviets fired first. Give Washington the justification it needs. I'll make it so they're at fault, Patton says. Then we go. It's the kind of false flag operation that would make Machiavelli proud. And the terrifying thing, Patton absolutely could do it. His officers are loyal. His army is positioned perfectly. The Soviets are already causing enough genuine incidents that a manufactured one would be easy to hide. The officials listening to this don't know whether to be impressed or horrified. Mostly horrified. Because this is George S. Patton, the man who slapped shell-shocked soldiers, who led the largest tank assault in American history, who said he believed in reincarnation and had fought in past lives. Brilliant? Absolutely. Unpredictable. Dangerously so. And now he's offering to start the next World War on a platter. Patton's diary, May 18th, 1945. He writes in his cramped handwriting, the words almost vibrating with conviction. The American army, he records, could beat the Russians with the greatest ease. He's done the math, studied the intelligence reports, war-gamed the scenarios. American air superiority would dominate the battlefield. The Soviets have numbers, but their planes are inferior. The US would own the skies. American logistics are light years ahead. The Red Army still uses horses for transport. The Americans have trucks, trains, supply chains that span continents. American discipline and firepower would cut through Soviet masses like a hot knife through butter. It wouldn't even be close, Patton believes. But, and this is the critical part, the window is closing. Demobilization has already begun. American soldiers are going home by the thousands. Every day, the army gets weaker. Every week, the urgency fades. Now we can, Patton writes. Later, we won't be able to. There's a desperation in those words, a sense of watching history slip away. He's right, and he knows he's right, and nobody's listening. Then there's the other thing, the thing that makes modern readers deeply uncomfortable. August 8th, 1945, Patton's diary again. He writes about the Russians in terms that are not subtle. He calls them Asiatic, Mongolian, uncivilized. The language is racist by any standard, then or now. Patton views the Soviets through a lens of ethnic and cultural superiority that's hard to stomach. He genuinely believes Americans can't understand the Soviets because they're fundamentally different. Not just politically, but racially, culturally, almost biologically. It's important to acknowledge this. Patton wasn't just a hard-nosed military strategist. He was a man of his time, with all the prejudices that entailed. His anti-Soviet stance wasn't purely strategic. It was personal, visceral, rooted in bigotry. Does that make him wrong about the Soviet threat? History would suggest no. Stalin's regime would go on to kill millions more. Eastern Europe would languish under totalitarian rule for 46 years. But it complicates the narrative. Patton wasn't a prophet. He was a deeply flawed man who happened to be right about one big thing. By late summer 1945, Washington had heard enough. Eisenhower is getting daily reports. Patton said this. Patton proposed that. Patton is talking to journalists. The reaction is horror. Patton has gone from America's greatest battlefield commander to its biggest liability in a matter of months. Eisenhower is in an impossible position. Patton is his friend. They've served together since North Africa. But this can't continue. The press is starting to get wind of Patton's views. Questions are being asked. Articles are being written. And Patton? Patton doesn't care. He's on a mission now. Because he believes, truly, deeply believes, that if someone doesn't speak up, America will sleepwalk into a disaster that will last generations. He's tried quiet warnings. He's tried official channels. He's tried going through proper military hierarchy. None of it worked. So Patton decides to go nuclear. But Patton had one more bombshell to drop. And this one would cost him everything. Again, on September 22nd, 1945. A press conference was held in Bad Tolz, Bavaria, Patton's headquarters. The war has been over for 4 months. Germany is occupied. The Allies are trying to rebuild a shattered continent. And reporters have questions. Lots of questions. Patton sits at a table, relaxed, confident. He's done hundreds of these. He's good with the press, usually. They love his quotable one-liners, his swagger, the pearl-handled revolvers, and the profanity. But today, someone asks about denazification. It's a reasonable question. The Allied policy is clear. Remove all Nazis from positions of power. Judges, police chiefs, teachers, bureaucrats. Anyone who is a party member gets fired. The goal is to cleanse Germany of Nazi influence. But there's a problem. In practice, it's chaos. You can't run a country when you've fired everyone who knows how the water system works, or the electrical grid, or the postal service. The reporter asks Patton what he thinks about the policy. And Patton, George S. Patton, the man who liberated concentration camps, who saw the full horror of the Nazi regime, opens his mouth. The Nazi thing, he says, is just like a Democratic-Republican election fight. The room goes silent. Did he really just say that? He did, and he keeps going. Party membership was often just about getting a job, Patton explains. Most people joined because they had to, not because they believed. It's no different than being a Democrat or Republican back home, he says. The reporters are scribbling furiously. They can't believe what they're hearing. Patton has just compared the Nazi Party, the organization that orchestrated the Holocaust, to American political parties. The explosion is immediate. Within hours, the quotes hit the wire services. Within days, they're front-page news across America. The headlines scream, "Patton defends Nazis." General compares Hitler's party to Democrats and Republicans. The outrage is nuclear. Veterans groups are furious. Jewish organizations are appalled. Politicians are demanding his head. And Eisenhower? Eisenhower is beyond fury. He's been covering for Patton for months, smoothing over the anti-Soviet rants, keeping the media at bay, making excuses. But this is indefensible. Because here's the tragedy. Patton was actually right about the practical problem. Germany did need to function. You couldn't remove every single former Nazi and expect society to work. Some level of pragmatism was necessary. Even Eisenhower knew this. Even Washington knew this. But Patton's presentation was catastrophic. He made it sound like the Nazis were just another political party, like membership didn't matter, like ideology was irrelevant. After Buchenwald, after Dachau, after the revelation of 6 million murdered Jews, it was political suicide. And Patton had loaded the gun and pulled the trigger himself. The consequences come swiftly. The media firestorm doesn't die down. If anything, it intensifies. Eisenhower is getting pressure from Washington, from London, from Moscow. The Soviets are having a field day with propaganda. American general defends fascists. September 28, 1945, 6 days after the press conference. Eisenhower relieves Patton of command of the Third Army. The Third Army, the force Patton built, the men he led from Normandy to Bavaria, the greatest armored command in American history. Gone. In its place, the 15th Army. On paper, it sounds important. In reality, it's a joke. The 15th Army is a paper army, a skeletal staff tasked with writing the official history of the European campaign. It has no combat troops, no tanks, no mission beyond bureaucracy. It's an exile dressed up as a reassignment. The most dangerous man in Europe, neutered. Patton takes it with bitter grace. Publicly, he accepts the decision. Privately, he's seething, because he knows what this really is. Punishment, silencing. An attempt to shove him into irrelevance until everyone forgets about him. But Patton has no intention of being forgotten. In the weeks that follow, Patton makes a decision. He's done playing by their rules. Done being the good soldier. Done keeping his mouth shut. He tells his close confidants, "When I finish this job, I shall resign, not retire." The distinction is critical. If he retires, he's still bound by military regulations, still subject to the chain of command, still required to keep certain secrets. "If I retire," he says bitterly, "I will still have a gag in my mouth." But if he resigns, he's a civilian, free to speak his mind, free to tell the American people everything. And Patton has a lot to say. His plan is coming together. In early 1946, once he's back in the States, he'll go public. Not just about the Soviets, about everything. He's planning to criticize Eisenhower. The cautious strategy that Patton believes cost American lives. The decision to let Montgomery lead Operation Market Garden, a disaster that killed thousands for nothing. The refusal to take Prague and Berlin, the betrayal of Eastern Europe, the political decisions made in London and Washington while soldiers died in the field. Patton is sitting on explosive material. Names, dates, decisions. The kind of inside information that could rewrite how Americans understand the war. And he knows it will sell. The American public loves Patton. His memoir would be a bestseller. His speaking tour would pack auditoriums. He'd be untouchable, the most famous general in America, telling the truth without a filter. Washington's worst nightmare. In November and December 1945, Patton goes through the motions. He oversees the History Project, attends ceremonial functions, put on the uniform, and play the part. But inside, he's burning. a brilliant warrior reduced to desk work. The man who raced across France is now filing reports. The general who wanted to fight the Soviets was now writing footnotes about battles he wasn't allowed to win. It's humiliating, degrading, designed to break him. But Patton isn't broken. He's planning his comeback. He writes to Beatrice, make arrangements, books his flight home. December 10th, 1945. That's the date. He'll fly back to the United States, resign his commission, start talking. The gag will come off. Everything will come out. Just a few more weeks. December 9th, 1945. One day before his scheduled departure. Patton decides to go pheasant hunting. It's a Sunday. Cold but clear. A chance to get out of the office, clear his head. He brings his chief of staff, General Hobart Gay. His driver, PFC Horace Woodring. A hunting dog. It's supposed to be a simple day trip. A few hours in the countryside, some birds, some fresh air. Then he'll finish packing, tie up loose ends. Catch that flight tomorrow, home, freedom, the chance to finally speak the truth. What could possibly go wrong? He never made that flight. And what happened on December 9th, 1945, remains one of history's darkest mysteries. On December 9th, 1945, early Sunday morning, cold and clear in Mannheim, Germany. Patton wakes early, restless. Tomorrow's the big day, his flight home. But today, he needs to get out. Clear his head, pheasant hunting. Perfect. He calls his chief of staff, General Hobart Gay. His driver, PFC Horace Woodring. They pile into Patton's staff car, a 1938 Cadillac Model 75 limousine. There's also a hunting dog. It's shivering in the front seat. Patton, in a rare moment of kindness, moves to the back seat. Let the dog warm up, he says. That simple act of compassion may have saved 2 lives and sealed his fate. The hunting trip is uneventful. A few birds, some conversation. Patton is in good spirits, actually, talking about home, about what he'll do once he's free to speak. Around 11:45 a.m., they're driving back to Mannheim. The road is straight, traffic is light. Woodring is driving. Gay is in the front passenger seat, the dog between them. Patton is in the back, looking out, the window at the German countryside. Then, without warning, a 2.5-ton army truck pulls out from a side road, directly into their path. Woodring hits the brakes. The Cadillac skids. But there's no time. The collision happens at low speed, maybe 20 miles per hour. It's not a terrible crash. The Cadillac's front end crumples slightly. The truck barely has a dent. Woodring is fine. Gay is fine. The dog is fine. But in the back seat, Patton is slumped over. His head had hit something. The roof partition, the back of the front seat. Nobody's quite sure. But the damage is catastrophic. His neck is broken, cervical spine severed. George S. Patton, the man who survived North Africa, Sicily, France, and Germany without a scratch, is paralyzed from the neck down, from a fender bender. Gay rushes to him. George, are you hurt? Patton's voice is weak but clear. I'm afraid this is it, Hap. I'm paralyzed. They get him to a military hospital in Heidelberg. The diagnosis is grim. Complete paralysis below the neck. He can breathe, he can talk, but he can't move. The doctors are cautiously optimistic, though. With time, with care, he might recover some function, maybe not full recovery, but something. Patton is lucid, alert. He jokes with the nurses, complains about the food, dictates letters to Beatrice. For 12 days, he holds on. Then, on December 21st, everything changes. Suddenly, Patton takes a turn. His breathing becomes labored. He's struggling. The doctors diagnose a pulmonary embolism, a blood clot in the lungs. It's a common complication for paralyzed patients, they say. Not unexpected. At 5:55 p.m., December 21st, 1945, George S. Patton Jr. died. He's 60 years old. One day he's joking with nurses. Next, he's gone. The official cause, complications from injuries sustained in a traffic accident. Case closed, right? Except nothing about this case is closed. Start with the accident itself. The Army truck that hit them. It was carrying 3 men, the driver and 2 passengers. After the collision, they got out. I looked at the damage, talked to Woodring and Gay. Then they disappeared, vanished into post-war Germany and were never questioned, never identified, never found. No official Army investigation was ever conducted. Think about that. A 4-star general is paralyzed in a collision with a military vehicle, and the Army doesn't investigate. The accident reports? Missing. Gone from the archives. The Cadillac itself? The actual car from the crash was destroyed. The car displayed at the Patton Museum today is a similar model, but not the real one. And here's the kicker. The Army requested an autopsy. Standard procedure for a high-ranking officer dying under unusual circumstances. Beatrice Patton refused. Her husband was buried without one. So there's no forensic evidence, no toxicology, no way to verify what actually killed him. Convenient, or just grief. The conspiracy theories started almost immediately, which are Soviet assassination. The motive is obvious. Patton was about to go home and become Stalin's loudest critic in America. He had credibility, he had a platform, he had explosive information. The Soviets had already murdered millions of their own people. What's one American general? The NKVD, Stalin's secret police, had agents all over occupied Germany. They had means. They had an opportunity. Bill O'Reilly, in his book on Patton, claims Stalin gave the direct order. Silence Patton before he can speak. The method? Stage an accident, or capitalize on a real one. Either way, finish the job in the hospital with poison. A simple injection. An embolism that's not really an embolism. No autopsy means no proof. Problem solved. OSS operation. This one's even darker. In 1979, a former OSS operative named Douglas Bazata made a stunning confession at a dinner party. He claimed that Wild Bill Donovan, chief of the Office of Strategic Services, ordered him to kill Patton. "I was paid to kill Patton," Bazata said. According to Bazata, the hit was a 2-stage operation. First, stage the accident, then finish him in the hospital with poison disguised as medical treatment. The motive? Prevent World War III. Or perhaps prevent Patton from revealing wartime secrets that would embarrass Eisenhower, Roosevelt's legacy, and the entire Allied command structure. Bazata claimed he carried it out. Patton's death was murder, American-made. It was just an accident. Most historians land here. Their argument? Conspiracy theories give too much credit to the conspirators. How could anyone predict Patton's route that day? He decided to go hunting on a whim. The roads were random. The timing was a coincidence. You can't stage an accident if you don't know where the target will be. Patton's injuries are consistent with the crash. Broken neck from low-speed collision. Rare, but it happens. The pulmonary embolism? Standard complication for paralyzed patients. No poison needed. Historian Carlo Dieste, Patton's biographer, is blunt. Conspiracy theorists have failed to provide the slightest evidence of foul play. Missing files are suspicious, sure. But bureaucratic incompetence explains that just as well as murder. Sometimes, he argues, a tragic accident is just a tragic accident. So what's the truth? The missing files are suspicious. The vanished witnesses are suspicious. The timing, one day before going home, is damning. But Bazata's credibility is questionable. He was old when he made his confession, possibly seeking attention. No hard evidence backs his claims. The Soviet theory is plausible, but pure speculation. No documents, no defectors confirming it, just motive and opportunity. The accident theory is the simplest. Occam's razor says the simplest explanation is usually right. But the simplest explanation doesn't account for everything. Why no investigation? Why no autopsy? Why did those 3 men disappear? Maybe we'll never know. What we do know is this. George S. Patton was days away from taking the gag off. Days away from telling America everything. And then he was gone. December 24th, 1945. Christmas Eve. Luxembourg American Cemetery. Snow falling softly on 5,000 white crosses. They bury Patton among his men. The soldiers of the Third Army, the boys who followed him from Normandy to Bavaria. He'd requested it. "I want to be buried with my men," he'd said. More than 5,000 people attend. Soldiers, civilians, generals, and privates. His orderly, Sergeant William Meeks, stands at attention, tears streaming down his face. A bugler plays taps. 3 volleys crack across the frozen cemetery. And they lower George S. Patton into the ground, the most dangerous man in Europe, silenced forever. What if Patton had lived? What if he'd made that December 10th flight? Gone home, resigned, started talking? Would he have warned America about the Soviets loudly enough to change policy? Would the Cold War have started differently, faster, harder, but perhaps shorter? Or was he the warmonger they said? Would he have pushed America into World War III, nuclear annihilation, the end of civilization? We'll never know. What we do know is what happened after he died. In 1946, Churchill gave his Iron Curtain speech. Patton's warnings delivered too late. In 1948, the Berlin blockade began. Soviet aggression, just as Patton predicted. In 1949, the Soviets detonated their first atomic bomb. In 1961, the Berlin Wall went up. For 46 years, the Cold War raged. Millions lived and died behind the Iron Curtain. Eastern Europe remained enslaved until 1989. Every year, every decade, Patton's ghost whispered, "I told you so." Was Patton a prophet or a warmonger? History's verdict: both. He saw the Soviet threat when no one else would. He was right about Stalin's ambitions, right about Eastern Europe, right about the long struggle ahead. But he was also reckless, racist in his thinking, willing to risk millions of lives on his strategic hunches. One Third Army veteran said it best. Patton saw what the politicians couldn't. He wasn't crazy, he was early. Early and dangerous and right. So here's the question for you. If you had been in that room in May 1945, watching the Soviets, knowing what was coming, would you have pulled the trigger on World War III? Would you have risked everything on Patton's gamble? Or would you have stayed silent like everyone else, hoping for the best? Patton chose to speak, and it killed him. What do you think? Was Patton murdered? Was he right about the Soviets? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you want to know about the general who actually fought the Soviets, check out the video on screen about the Korean War. Thanks for watching. Remember, history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes.